Off Limits is the money podcast that blows up stereotypes, showing you that managing money doesn't have to be hard.
We want you to thrive, not only with your money, but in every part of your life.
What you will get out of this podcast is real, relatable, and relevant tips and strategies that you can apply today. Hi, I'm Donald Raymond, and this is
Christine Spiak. We are money coaches, business owners, and colleagues who are passionate about helping you become more of who you are. So if you're ready, join us.
Welcome to another episode of Off Limits. I'm Donald Raymond here with Christine, and we actually have another guest with us today. Christine, you want to introduce us to our guest?
I sure do. I am so happy that Sarah Militano is here with us today. She's an investment advisor with Paradigm Consulting Incorporated in Utica, New York. Sarah is an accredited investment fiduciary who holistically reviews her clients' goals, priorities, and concerns to develop a customized plan to best meet their needs while putting the client's interests first. Sarah is a wife, mother, and involved community member. She serves on fundraising committees such as the American Heart Association, is a board member for the Mohawk Valley Businesswomen's Network, a member of the Hamilton College Alumni Association, and the United Way's Emerging Leaders Connect Committee. In her free time, Sarah enjoys spending time with family, friends, cooking, as well as health and fitness. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Off Limits.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with both of you today and all the listeners. I'm sharing with Christine. I'm super excited, and I think this is a bucket list item for me professionally, so yay.
Yay. Yeah, I'm thrilled you're here, and I think it's going to be a great conversation.
And nice to meet you, Sarah, and maybe this will be a launch pad for you. You can start your own podcast soon. You know, Christine, you said a bunch of big words in that introduction, and one of those words was fiduciary. Sarah, can you help unpack the word fiduciary for everybody before we jump into this whole financial planning world?
Absolutely. If you're watching TV, streaming, you hear and see the commercials about a fiduciary, and it's an important part of our role. It, simply put, is making sure you're putting your clients' interests before yours, and really going over and beyond just a standard duty of care. Really, that investment professional is doing a deep analysis of what you need as an individual in order to meet your goals. And the whole plan and the whole process is driven to meet you as an individual, your priorities before us as an advisor.
Should we assume every investment professional has that fiduciary accreditation?
No, it's actually something you earn. It's a designation, and you have to go through rigorous programs. You have to continue your education annually, uphold a code of ethics. And so there are things that go into being a fiduciary. So not every investment professional is one. They should. You should act, in your client's best interest, just like you hope when you drop your car off to the mechanics. If they're telling you really need new brake pads, I don't know. I get my car on the road. I get from point A to point B, but I don't know all the mechanics behind it. So you really have to have trust in that person. And, the fiduciary designation is something real.
I like that. You gave us something tangible, the mechanic, right? We've all had our cars serviced, but we may not all have a financial professional in our corner. And that element of trust when you drop the car off, am I going to get taken advantage of? If it's a brake issue, do I trust this guy to put brakes on my car that are going to protect my family? With my money and my finances and my investments, how do I have peace of mind that this person I'm working with is going to uphold this code of ethics? How can I trust this person to take care of my best interest as opposed to their best interest or their company's best interest, right? And I think, I know from conversations that I've had, that can be a hurdle or a barrier for a lot of people. They just want to tuck their money in a mattress, is kind of the old adage. And other people want to throw it into something totally new and random and high risk because they don't see that as any more risky than working with a financial professional who just has a quota to meet, right? And so I think that's, putting it into the perspective of the mechanic. That's something I feel like everybody can relate to.
Well, why don't we walk it back a little bit, because we kind of just dove into the deep end about being an investment
now that we know what a fiduciary is. Yeah, there we go.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this type of role for your career.
Perfect. Absolutely. So I'm here with Christine in upstate central New York. I was born and raised here. After college, came back and jumped into the financial services industry. By luck, by chance, I was in one of the firm principals company right after college, studied economics, didn't know what to do with it. I knew I loved the analytical part of economics. I'm a very personal person. I like to be around people. I like to help people. And so really my role today is the perfect merger of those two components of my personality. So growing up, I came from a household where my dad was a public school teacher. My mom stayed at home for many years with my sisters and I, and went back to work in the not-for-profit industry. So there wasn't a lot of extra money to come around. And saving for retirement, investing wasn't always a topic of conversation in our house. So I didn't know this world existed. Now that I know it existed, I feel like part of my growing up, and very similar to what you two are trying to achieve with your podcast, is really open up people's eyes that things are achievable. Just be disciplined, work with your professional team to align your goals. And so I'm happy to be on here chatting about, what this world is, how our two worlds collide, and really help all the listeners.
I think you said a lot of great things in there. Not only did we get to know a little bit about you, but you're talking about what I say a lot is you don't know what you don't know. So when you were young, you didn't know you could achieve this because you didn't know it was out there. But then once you were exposed to it, look at where you are today. And I think that's so important for, all of our listeners to take away. You really don't know what you don't know. But once you find out, in my opinion, that knowledge is power. And then creating those stretch goals and just, outside of your imagination, outside of the box thinking, that's how you really can achieve your dreams. What did you hear, Donald?
Yeah, asking questions, and I feel like I heard a little bit of maybe a nod toward the title of the show. Not that it was necessarily off limits to talk about retirement, but you guys weren't talking about it in your homes. And so, something that Christine and I have talked about often is how everyone in the household needs to be part of this financial conversation. It doesn't matter if you're 2 years old and you have no idea what's going on. Include them in the conversation. Expose them at the appropriate level to where their food comes from and where their toys come from. Start little financial applications at any age that are appropriate to the age, and get your kids involved. Get the whole house involved. As your kids grow older, Christine, you shared something, that was outstanding that your daughter said to you not too long ago, where she actually thanked you for all of this effort and all of this, work that you're putting in, and including her, even though she didn't say it this way, you included her in that conversation. You included her in that process. And that's why she knew how hard you were working, how disciplined you were, and what the value of that effort was. And so to me, it's this idea of off limits, right? Even though it wasn't necessarily for, in my household, I share a different story. We were actually told, don't ask about the money. It wasn't that we weren't making enough money. My dad just had a very different approach toward it. And we were not really allowed to ask about the money or to really ask for things, right? You got what you got, everything was taken care of, and you just didn't talk about it. And that's really where the idea of the show was born, is this experience and this observation out in the world where it's just, another word is taboo, right? Christine, you've used that word before. It's off limits. It's not approachable. And I heard you say, it needs to be approachable. You need to approach it and then ask all these questions and get involved and find out what your options are and get a professional to help you walk through those options.
It can definitely be very uncomfortable for people to speak about money openly. And the sooner you do it, the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to be. Just like anything else, right? When you're learning to ride that bike, it's very awkward in the beginning. But the more you're out there, the more you fall, you're going to trip and stumble, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you come and the more open. And I think
Definitely.
when you get to that part, you're willing to let your team of experts come in and help you, right? Christine and I always chat about, our clients, what we're doing, how we can help them in. And you always say, it works best when the person on the other side of the table is ready.
Absolutely. They have to be ready.
And so, yes, all of us can help you get there, but ultimately it has to be a drive within. And so the sooner you do that with your kids, your family, the better off. I recently, my older son broke the baby's piggy bank. So we had to teach him that you can't just break things. And he loves to save. He's saved since he was little. He found it fun to put the coins in the piggy bank. Probably has more money than me now.
There you go.
How old is he? Tell us how old he is.
He's 4.5. 4.5 going
man,
on
he's been
like
doing
13.
well. I want his allowance.
Oh yeah, he's like, Grandpa, I need $1.
Oh, he hustles. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. And so he might be a future car salesman. Like,
There we go. Nothing wrong with
pennies. We laugh. And so, I made him open up his wallet. He's 4.5. He got a wallet. Take his $10 out and give it to me to buy the baby a new piggy bank. He was shaking. It was uncomfortable for him. But then we put it on a piece of paper, and I said, you have to clean up the toys every single night by yourself for 10 days, and then you get your $10 back. And so, every night he would go and cross it off. But he learned because the baby threw something. He's like, Mommy, you really got to go and get money out of Dominic's piggy bank to because he threw a toy. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. But and I saw my cousin always say to her, young kids, when they would just not think anything of money or not understand the value of their toys, and they just kept asking for something. And it's like, I exaggerate, but I say, oh, you want a new Matchbox car? Mommy has to go to work for 3 days to get you a new Matchbox car,
There you
right?
go.
Because he can understand we're at work to be able to provide to them. They don't understand the true value of a day's work yet, but they get mom and dad are away. If I want this, then I don't get to spend time with that. So there's definitely very easy, simple ways to start with your children. And the more they know now, the better off they'll be positioned later on.
I love so much what you said in that story about how you are teaching your son responsibility with money, how you're having him earn it so he can earn it back after breaking his brother's toy. Giving into him and just saying, okay, it's okay, you broke it, Mommy will buy a new one. There's no lesson in that.
Right.
It's a lot more effort for you for 10 days to make sure he's cleaning up the toys every night. But that effort will pay off dividends, not just for you, but for him throughout his entire life. So you're setting him up for success for sure.
Yeah, Christine, something you always talk about is those good behaviors, right? The habits that are associated with money. And so, Sarah, you're creating some of those good habits now. I really appreciate how you developed that whole structure. And maybe it was just impulsive and it happened unintentionally, and that's fine too. But it sounds like maybe you had purpose in meaning in how you approached it, And so, giving him both a consequence and then a plan to earn that money back. It wasn't a loan. It wasn't, money owed or anything like that. This was money he had already saved that he lost, and then he was able to work and earn back. And so, having the consequence structure, but also the benefits tied to it, you don't just, right now we've gone through at least, two great resignations where people are just walking off the job and there's like zero consequences to it and everything. And so you're breaking that cycle in how you're raising your kids, and I think that's great. I think a lot of people are going to go home and apply that technique as soon as they hear this.
I hope so. And take it, own it, make it your own. Maybe not on your spouse or your, your significant other, but hey, we hold each other accountable too. So you have to have it.
Well, we talk about failing forward too, right, Christine? So
we do. That's something you like to say a lot.
Yeah, you have to walk your way through this. And we talked earlier. You were saying that you gain trust and you gain you gain some of that momentum and some of that willingness to invest and take some of these risks and chances by doing it, right? You just have to get started. But to do that, you kind of have to accept this idea, at least, of there's a possibility of failure. It's not always going to go perfectly. It's not always going to go as expected. And that's okay, because you learn, you adjust, and we keep going. And that's really the key, right, is that you don't stop. You just make those little adjustments. We've got a quote we like to share, which is make a small change and learn from it. And then you make a larger change, you learn from that, and then you repeat, right? And so the idea being you just keep learning and you just keep going.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you guys are constantly, adjusting budgets and plans. Life happens, right?
Yeah.
Nothing is perfect. But not only can your money coach help with those, day-to-day changes, but when you work with an advisor, you start with a plan, right? Here's where Sarah is today. Here's where I want to be in 5, 10 years, 15 years out, right? You need those short-term goals, your medium-term goals, and your long-term goals. What do you have to do now to reach all those, and at least annually touch base with that? Like, be honest to yourself, right? And how are you on track to meeting all of those goals, and what do you have to change? Like, your role, and we support a wholly, is, when you pay off a debt, where are you going to reallocate those monies?
Yes.
Not only for yourself today, celebrate those little goals throughout. You have to, right? You need that reward.
You've been watching the show.
Listen, we're on our phones all the time, right? You want that instant gratification. So celebrate a little bit. But then how can you redeploy your resources so you meet those longer term goals now? And, that's a lot of what advisors do, is help you through that behavioral finance part of it. We jokingly say, when you see volatile markets, right, get you off the ledge. This is, and remind you, it's really for that long-term goal, right? We can, not that we see through the future, but, we understand the modeling behind it, why your plan was built in a certain way, and just having that reassurance during those uncertain times that it's going to be okay. It's going to work out. We might have to adjust a little bit throughout that journey, but someday you'll get to what I call a work optional lifestyle. Do I want to work or don't?
Nice.
Am I there financially to retire or not? What do I have to do? Is it I work a few more years and then I'm there, or am I going to change my lifestyle? Most people don't like change, right? So they don't necessarily say, yes, I'm going to cut my, lifestyle in half so I don't have to work. But you have to accept one or the other and be responsible. And the earlier you do that, the better. Just like everyone hates the compounding interest on a loan, you will love the compounding nature of investing.
That's it.
But it takes time. It's not timing the market, right? I mean, unless you're some superhuman computer, which is a little freakish, but you're never going to time it perfectly, the bottom or the top, let alone twice, when to get in and when to get out. So it's really to be disciplined over time, and it's the time you are in the market, not necessarily day-to-day looking at, oh my gosh, it's up this much, it's down that much. You'll drive yourself
don't
crazy.
do that.
Yes.
And that, I think, is the nature,
I'm there to get
too.
crazy. Put that stress on your advisor.
That's
you know
right.
what? Live your life.
You chose this.
There's a couple of things that you said in there that I really want to kind of expand on. And you've said this a couple of times so far. Have your team of people. So Sarah and I have had said a lot. We are in two different lanes, right? She really wants to help you with that work optional lifestyle, which I love that mentality. And then Donald and I really want to help you with the day-to-day managing of your money so you can stretch it, so you can meet those short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. But we're in two different lanes.
That's right.
But helping you get to ultimately where you want to be. And then there's accountants and insurance agents. There's so many different professionals to have on your team to help make you successful in life. So I think that's a really important point to expand on a little bit before we move on. Something else sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I always, when I begin a relationship with a client, I tell them this is a two-way street. Just with any other of those teams of your professionals, right? You both have to be in it. You have to like each other. It's a relationship. So, once you get to the point where I'm investing or I'm at that retirement point and I don't know how to get my money from my 401k to live off of it, well, you need to trust, we said, right? That person you're working with, because this is really your livelihood. Let us have the sleepless nights, not you. And you have to like each other, right? It's a money relationship. So,
and a long-term relationship.
Long-term.
And you know what? Exactly. Good point. A very long-term relationship. Most advisors today aren't transactional. If you want to talk about the history of an advisor, right? It used to be mostly commission-based, where you're just getting paid to make a transaction for an individual. Now, it's a lot of an ongoing and advisory relationship. So we're here throughout all those different times, being accountable and getting you to your goals. So a big takeaway is it's a relationship with your money coach, your advisor, your accountant, your attorneys, whoever, the insurance agent, just like who you work with and trust. Now, you have to have the same philosophies too, right? I love Christine, but I don't see how she does this or that. Whoever your advisors are, and that's okay. You can still have friends that are in whatever profession, but ultimately pick a team of professionals you like and trust.
Yeah, we say that a lot, right? Interview them, check in with several before you make a commitment, right? And really know. And I think that's where, we talked about the different lanes and how we're in two totally different, swimming lanes here. But a lot of people tend to overlap them. I can't tell you how many times I've been not confused with, but identified as a financial planner. And here I am trying to encourage them to go find a financial planner, right? And so I make some recommendations, we do some introductions, but a lot of people don't see that distinction. And I think you just hit the nail on the head for me, which is it's a long-term relationship. And what Christine and I do is we want to teach you how to fish so that you can go out there and develop this pool of resources out there and live your life and chase your dreams and pursue the whys. But we don't want that to be a long-term relationship kind of intentionally because, and when I say long-term, it's lifetime, right? And so it could be 2 to 5 years potentially, depending on their needs. But eventually our relationship as a financial coach comes to an end, and that's intentional. We want to teach you the tools, and we want you to develop the behaviors and the support team to be able to go out and pursue these things on your own. And so that is for me, that's a very distinct difference, right? It's a short-term relationship where we are dealing with the day-to-day versus a long-term relationship where you're not dealing with the day-to-day.
Yep. You guys are the training wheels, right? You're really promoting someone to get a handle on their personal daily finances. What money comes in, where does it go? But then you guys tee them up for, okay, now that you're in a good, stable financial relationship with money, where do you go next?
That's right. Yeah, and I heard you say earlier, and it might have even been before we started recording, but live within your means. How do you be successful in this space? And so I'm adding this one in, but just 1 minute ago, you said the earlier you start, right? And so we say all the time, invest early and often. And so it's when you get started, and it's also participating actively throughout that lifetime, right? You don't just put a little bit of money in and walk away. You want to continuously feed this machine. And so, yes, we want to invest as soon as we can afford to and start as early as possible, but keep going, right? Keep interacting with it.
And Don, I think that comes together with knowing what advisor you're going to work with and talk to many different ones. Advisors tend to have a niche. And so it might be, I really love small investors, or I only work with retirees, or you know what? This is my first time investing. So in the future, near future, I'm going to be able to invest considerable more, but I just want to get my toes wet right now. So again, knowing who your advisor is and whether they're willing to accommodate or work within your parameters.
These are great things that you're saying. So let's break it down for our listeners. Someone who has never worked with a financial advisor before, maybe if we start there and kind of create a picture for them of really what's their first step. And I know Donald said start early, but what is early? Like, is it ever too late? Can you walk us through the process of someone who's looking for that financial advisor?
Absolutely. You could do business virtually, you could do it in person. So I would start there internally. How do I want a relationship? Do I want that local person where I could walk to their office? Doesn't have to be. So it's what your comfort level is with someone on either the screen or in person. Make sure you interview a few, see what their philosophy is. Are they a fiduciary acting in your best interest? And know that you have to be open during this process in order for them to appropriately guide you and advise you.
We got to stop there for a minute because I love that you said that. It's like going to the doctor's office with chest pain, but telling them you're there for something going on with your eye, right? Or whatever it may be. If we're not forthcoming with our physicians, with our financial advisors, then we're tying their hands for them. They can't work to the best of their ability because they don't have a complete picture.
Yep.
They don't know what's holistically going on with our money or our lives.
Absolutely. And if this is your first time, it's okay to be uncomfortable. We as advisors people, I say this, I retire every day. I work with a lot of retirees. Although I physically don't, but I bring someone from growth or accumulation into retirement. So just know who you're working with. And to answer the question of, is it ever too late? No, just know that how much you might need to put towards your goals it has to be realistic,
right?
Or you're going to adjust your goals, right? The sooner you can start, the better. If you can save for your children while they're young, great. Don't forego saving for retirement because there's no loan for retirement. Your first job, jump in, just start with something and make sure you're increasing over time. If your employer offers you a retirement plan, that's great, right? You know if it's in your bank account, if you're doing your zero budget, it's being allocated someplace. But if it doesn't go to that bank account yet, great. You know it's going into your retirement account. So the sooner you can start, the better.
I want to flip to the other side. So is it ever too late? But you said something earlier, and I kind of have a personal experience with this where it was an epiphany for me, where I had been saving into retirement a small amount for years, and it was not inspiring, right? I was using an employee or an employer-sponsored plan. I was putting the minimum amount that I could put in there because I was living on all of my cash, right? And I wanted as much money back to me as possible. So I participated, but not aggressively, right? I wasn't trying to maximize the match or any of that. So this is my first job out of college. And for years and years and years, it really just didn't seem like it was growing. But then all of a sudden, just exponential growth overnight. I started putting more in, the market started, contributing more because now the balances are higher. And that really, for me, was the incentive. And this is now, 20 plus years ago. But that for me was really the inspiration that I needed to really change my personal financial philosophy to this retirement thing is no joke. This could actually work. Nobody actually told me that. I had to figure that out on my own. But all of a sudden, I started to see that curve go up and get steeper and steeper, and I got really excited about that. But what is the experience out there, just your experience, and how long does it take to get some of this going on average? Somebody getting started, maybe they're in college, just out of college, they've gotten their first job. What does that typically look like for most people? Do you have a baseline there? I know I'm putting you on an island here, but
I think the 5 to 10 year mark, and again, that's retirement's that long-term goal,
right?
You really got to work and figure out the short medium, long term, and you have to have patience, right? You're going to have market and business cycles. It's going to be up and down. Don't be afraid of that. And as you get closer to retirement, that can become scary. But you have to know how your plan is set up and why.
And I think for me, I'm speaking and I'm giving you an opportunity there to really speak to those younger candidates, right? I mean, these are people just like me 20 years ago or more now. I'll go into the exact number.
Or less.
You're aging yourself. We're not doing it to you.
So when I was getting started, though, I did not have a good understanding or appreciation that I needed to be patient. I thought, hey, put money in and it's going to pay me back. And then, here I am 5, 6, 7 years later, and I haven't seen the value of my efforts, and about that time I was changing careers. And so I was looking at rolling that over into an IRA and everything around me was changing. And that's when I started to interact with it more. But yeah, I think that's really important. Anybody out there that doesn't know that it's going to take, for me, I think that 7-year mark was about where I started to see that change. And not dramatically, but it started to move up for really the first time that I could tell. And I think that speaks to two things, just having the patience and also, like you said, don't interact with this every day. Don't be the person that checks in on your retirement every month. That's not a number that is important to anyone, really. It shouldn't be. It's not something you need to track. Let you guys track that. That's your job, right?
Yep.
I'm wondering if maybe people don't, a couple of things. Maybe they're resistant to hiring the financial advisor because what we said earlier, their industry has a bad rap. We talked about car mechanics, what garage am I taking my car to? Am I going to get swindled? Are they going to tell me something's wrong? I have no idea. When I open up the hood of my car, I see an engine and I know where to put my washer fluid, and for myself, check the oil. And, that's pretty much it. If a mechanic is telling me anything else, the only thing I can really say is, okay, how much? Mm-hmm. And I think people feel that way about their money too. I certainly don't understand the market and where I should invest my money. So having that co-pilot, that investment professional right there guiding me, but as Sarah said, having a similar philosophy is really important. But what I'm wondering is, my question is, do you think that people have that barrier because they're afraid that because they don't know, you're going to be putting them on the spot and asking them questions that they just don't know the answers to? So because I don't know, I'm just going to stay away.
Absolutely. Does our industry have a bad reputation? Yes. Sorry if any lawyers are listening, but sometimes we're put up there with the sleazy lawyers, and I think that comes from the advisor who's not working in their client's best interest. Someone who wasn't explained the fees and the expenses with investing, and then all of a sudden you see, oh, wait, this isn't free. So really, now that we're in a more of a full disclosure world, which is how we work, I think that's one way to get over the barriers of entry. And then they're uncomfortable, right? A lot of times clients will come and like, well, I didn't really know what to expect, but it wasn't this. Like, we're human, right? We're here to help you. So it's just take that chance to work with an advisor, and you'll be rewarded long term. Vanguard has a study. When you work with an advisor, you actually long term earn 3% more in your investments, and that's we're the professionals. Christine, you said you're not comfortable picking and choosing how to invest your money. Again, that's what we do. So part of it's not letting you jump out of the market at the wrong times, right? You want to buy low, not sell low. Working with the team to get you to your end goals. And it's a little bit of an accountability, right? Like when you were in school, if your teacher called you out in front of the class and you didn't do your homework, okay, that's a little bit embarrassing and awkward. So part of our job is to be that, accountability buddy. Hey, Christine, did you do this? And you have to answer to us, yes or no. And no one wants to be like, yeah, no, I didn't do that. Yeah. And then, just the allocation or the breakdown of not only what stocks and bonds, but how much in stocks, how much in international, how much in bonds. When I start talking this, people's heads go like, "Ooh, I'm afraid I don't know." And so that's really where, the value of an advisor you'll see long term.
Again, I mean, you're talking about some of the details of investing, but to your point, who's going to sit down and figure how many people on average are going to sit down and figure that out? Like you said, you're going to get an average of about a 3% return higher working with somebody long term. And, I think for me, what I heard was, and I'll use the mechanic reference again, if your car has a problem, you take it to the mechanic, not the doctor, right? These are both professionals, but they're professionals in totally different fields, right? And by contrast, you wouldn't go to the mechanic if you weren't feeling well. You would go see the doctor. And so this is where, again, if you've got questions about how to handle your retirement, you want to go talk to a retirement professional, somebody that deals with this day in and day out. And all of those different products and those different options that you just described, as well as many others, are going to be specific to that person's goals. And the accountability piece is just huge, right? So how quickly does somebody's day-to-day change versus their long-term goals? The long-term goal probably doesn't change, hopefully, right? If we've identified it correctly, it's going to stay there. The day-to-day and the seasons of life are going to alter quite a bit on the way toward that goal. But if you've got those long-term vehicles in place, that's what's helping you get ever closer to your goal and maybe even get there sooner. Christine, that's part of your story, right? You guys are now going to take that early retire or that optional lifestyle, work optional lifestyle earlier than expected. And I think that's great, but it's because you never took your eye off the ball, right? That accountability piece. And you guys didn't do that on your own. You guys did that with professionals in your corner.
Right, absolutely. So I want to say we were clear about it. We were clear about our goals, and then we worked with somebody, or we still do. We work with somebody who we know, like, and trust. He is a fiduciary. He has our best interest in mind, and he is helping us to get to where we want to go. And because of that, and because we started working with him now since 2018, Donald alluded to the fact of this work optional. My husband's 6 years older than me. So retiring at age 67 for him, we thought was going to be our reality. Because we've been working with this financial professional, he can now have that work optional lifestyle at age 58.
Yeah, so let's get relatable with everybody real quick, right? We talked about 3% more growth working with a professional. Let's make that retiring 10 years earlier than you thought, right?
Right. And that wasn't even our goal.
Exactly.
Like we didn't even know to make it a goal. It was an unintended consequence because we learned healthier habits with our money. We are content in our life, right? We're not just living in the moment and we show restraint with our money. It's not just money in, money out. And the goal setting is so important because when it comes to spending money, because we know short term right now, we're saving up to buy our next car and a camper because we want to start seeing the country. We're working on these short term goals, and our long term goal is having a lake house. So because we know this and this is what we're working on, when we have money coming in, sure, we can take vacations now, we can go out to eat now, but it's in proportion to us achieving these goals that we have.
And how easy would it be without the accountability of the long-term goal to just spend all of that money in the short term? Sarah, you said, if that money's in the bank account, zero-based budgets, we're giving every dollar a job, right? So we're going to spend that money somewhere. And if we don't have these long-term goals, we don't have these retirement vehicles, it might never make it into one of those categories. So, yeah, I think that's pretty important.
Christine said something I believe, really set someone up for success financially is living within your means. And going back to the younger investors, it's hard when you see your friends, buying the new car, getting the new house, buying this expensive whatever it might be that you and your peers are into. They're spending that money now, and it's hard not to compare yourself. But you will, as you age, those material things don't become as important. And the sooner you can learn that, live within your means and don't compare yourself. There might be a financial facade up. That person might not really be able to afford that lifestyle they're living. Be comfortable and true to who you are And then you're going to be Christine and her husband, who are now, hey, well, we're retiring 10 years early. We have a camper. We are purchasing that lake house. We're living life now. Whereas, people who maybe overlived younger are still paying for those consequences later on.
Well, they're asking that question. When is it too late? Is it too late for me to invest? Do I have enough time? And you're having that uncomfortable conversation with them about, well, listen, here's our runway. This is what it's going to take. Can you guys do this, right? Do you have the resources to do this, or how? How do you do this? Yeah. Or it's the other side. What adjustments? What are we going to have to dial back because we didn't plan, right? Or because we overlived.
Yep. I really think about whether it's, talking with Sarah today, taking the time and listening to this episode, and when you turn it off, think about what do you really want in your life? Is it the pool today? Is it the expensive vacation to Disney? Is it the really nice expensive car? Is that really what's making you happy in your life? And if it's not what you want, if it's something more towards your future, then set yourself up for success. Hire that financial professional so you can achieve what you really want, not what you see when you're scrolling through social media or what your next door neighbor is, doing at their house. So you're trying to one up them and do it at your house too. But use this episode as a moment in time to reflect and gain clarity on your own goals.
It's accountability again.
And your decisions are substantial. If you're not showing restraint today, then when you get, you just mentioned, how long is your runway? Well, when your runway is very short and you didn't show restraint when you were younger, I want to be thriving in retirement. I don't want to just be relying on Social Security. That's living below the poverty line if you're going to just rely on Social Security.
Yeah, if that. I want to take a financial coach kind of soapbox moment here, because we talked about failing forward earlier. And a lot of people are going to hear that and say, yeah, that's fine, but maybe I've already done it, right? Maybe I've already kept up with the Joneses. My neighbor put in a pool, so I had to put in a pool. They bought a new car, so I bought a new car. Somebody made a comment about something that I had, and so I felt like I needed to replace it. There's this huge, I think, sort of almost like peer pressure, or just a pressure, right, to live that way and to show that. But Sarah, you said, as you age, right, and that doesn't mean that we're all grandparents, right? But as we grow older, we care about that stuff less and less, or typically, right, we start to care about some of those material things less and less. But I just want to say it is going to happen. We all fall into that trap. We've all done it. We've all made the mistakes. Every one of us here, in this conversation, and probably everybody that we know, has made at least one of those impulse purchases or those pressure purchases to try to, even if it's not to fulfill that other person's, expectation, it was to make ourselves feel better, right? And so it's going to happen. And again, for me, that's just in the category of failing forward. You will make these mistakes. You will learn from them. We're trying to encourage you to make fewer mistakes. Identify when it happens, and it will happen. It's going to happen if it hasn't happened already. So, Christine, you said take this moment in time, and I would say reflect back over maybe 3 years of history. If you can remember that far, or if you have records that far, try to identify some behaviors where maybe you've made some of these decisions, made some of these purchases, or had this behavior that we could fit into this category, and then learn from that, right? Try to go back and find an example of something you bought that maybe you don't even have anymore, or you immediately had that buyer's remorse, or maybe you have regret now, and use that as incentive to now go start building and planning for your future.
It doesn't take much restraint, right?
No.
You just have to have clarity.
Yes, that you said it perfectly earlier. Your clearly defined goals. Make sure they're measurable, actionable, and that you're accountable for them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We started talking about Social Security a little. I mean, we just mentioned the word Social Security. Let's expand on that a little bit, because I do think that there is a false pretense for some people. Well, I'm going to work until I die. I'm going to collect Social Security, and that's going to be it. What does that mentality and mindset do for people? Are they able to live well in retirement with that type of mindset?
No. A little bit of history for you all. pension plans used to be the most popular source of retirement income. The late 80s, early 90s, employers began to realize how expensive it really is to have a successful pension. So 401k, profit sharing plans, defined contribution plans, what most employer sponsored plans are today, really came out of the late 80s, early 90s. But what that changed in our world was, you always heard of your grandparents surviving off of Social Security and the pension because they worked here locally, Oneida Limited, for years and years and years. That's how they lived. Yeah, GE, there's still pensions around. So if you're listening and you're like, I have a pension, there's still pensions. They're not all
good for you.
But you know what? A pension gave you a defined amount per month in retirement. Now employers give you a defined amount per month or per payroll that you are working for them. So that puts the pressure or the responsibility onto us to save. So it had to be a shift, when working with clients of different ages, different generations, you can kind of see where that transition began. And, they're either not prepared enough for retirement because early on they didn't know that they had to save now in order to have retirement later on because the generation before them just had it. It just appeared, right? And so now I think that's starting to fade. And because of those past failures, right, you had to learn. My grandparents lived off of a pension. My parents struggled, or maybe I support my parents now because they didn't save. Now I see the importance. So unfortunately, there's a generation in there that kind of suffered through that change. But hopefully now the future generations and the more open we are about our situations financially, and the more you know, the better off you are, and
Absolutely.
You're able to save. And retirement might look different for those individuals that are younger than us or just entering the workforce. And so I think it's a misconception that Social Security isn't the only source of your retirement paycheck. It was never intended to be, right? It was intended to be a supplement, to those pensions, now to your 401k plan. So if you think you're going to survive off of Social Security, maybe you're super handy, can live off the woods, the land, you're good at canning if you're up here in upstate New York because you don't have a garden all year. So we kind of laugh, but there are some people who think that's going to be the end game, and it's adjusting the reality and the consequences of that mindset.
Yeah, you gotta kind of put your mind in that future world reality too, right? I had an advisor tell me once years ago, and so I'm sure the numbers have adjusted some, but he said, a Honda Accord today will cost you $25,000, but when you retire, if you want to purchase something, equivalent to a Honda Accord, you're looking at over $100,000, maybe $125,000 for that same car. So we have to take all those things into consideration. And if you apply that to today's value of a dollar, I mean, how could that even be a reality, right? But you guys have been living this world, and you have models and projections, and you kind of live in that future 25, 50 years out all the time. And so what that economy looks like and how it all works, and understand it much better, and it's much more comfortable for you guys. And you can help us who don't think about it often prepare and understand how we can be prepared for that. Because I think a lot of people too, they just kind of put up this artificial barrier. I would love to be able to retire someday, but I know it's just not in my future. I'm not going to be able to do it. It's not in the cards, right? But that's a lie, and it's a self-imposed lie. And maybe with some help, they could start to put together at least a version of a retirement plan and have something instead of nothing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people forget too, when you get to retirement, you don't stop investing.
Right.
You change.
Great point.
It's a pivot, right? You've been used to accumulating or growing your account, although as you get closer, you might be more concerned about keeping your balance more stable. And now it's a shift. Now it's a change of investments to support income, not necessarily growth. So by working with people, I've learned that. I'm like, again, it's in my head. I understand you go, and then you just kind of keep going. But I had to learn. I'm like, oh, you just thought you take it all out, you do nothing with it, and you got to live off of this account forever. But again, it's the working with a professional who can get you there, and they know that part of it, or they know when's the best time to take Social Security, or how do I maximize what I have.
That's a great point, because you don't have to take Social Security at retirement age. You can take it beyond. And I think it's age 70. If you wait until that age, you'll actually get the maximum out of it. But maybe for some people, that's not the right age to start taking it.
And, here's the art of it. And here's where you have to really be open, honest, and comfortable with who you work with, right? We could run that Social Security projection all day long. Here's the optimal age month for you to take it. That's just numbers. That's not looking at, your family health, your potential longevity. So it's not perfect science, but there really is an art to this. And it's everyone's different, right? So we know we need to get you income, but where are we going to get your income from? How long do you anticipate you need income for? So it really is a customized plan per individual.
That's a great point you just made at the end. Generally speaking, how far out are you running projections? To what age are you trying to help people have their money last until?
Yes. Well, this is where it gets fun, working, with maybe a couple, and, you have different longevities, or, you have different retirement income stream. So typically we put a female out to age 90, and a male, they're about 82, 86, And statistically speaking, we're going to be here longer than you, Don. Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
And then one other question: how much percentage, while people are working, of their income do you recommend that they're putting into retirement?
Yeah. Most studies show you want to be in that 10 to 15% range. If you could do more, do it. Don't limit yourself. What we know is, right, and what you're all living with today is a high inflationary period. Your dollar today is not going to be worth your dollar tomorrow. So, don't just say, well, all the studies say 10 to 15%. That's a good guiding point. But if you're able to save more, save more.
Save more.
Going back to, Don, your experience, right? You're just putting in something to put it in. I encourage people, your starting goal should be to maximize your employer match.
Yep.
Right? You're leaving money on the table. And then from there, gradually increasing that next, goal or rewards at 10 to 15% range. Keep going if you can. Great. But you have to balance today, right? Yep. Don't say I'm going to put the maximum every single year, but then you're, bringing debts onto yourself today.
You're living off of credit cards.
Because that's not setting yourself up for failure. So it's really a holistic picture. How do I manage X, Y, and Z, my short-term goals, my daily budget with those long-term goals.
Yeah, invest what you can when you can, right, and then try to increase that, as much as possible. And honestly, this inflationary period, people still investing if they're investing. When this inflationary period is over, and there are some indicators right now that possibly we're moving out of it, we'll see, right? Then you can adjust, and maybe your dollar does go farther. So maybe after inflation, I'll say it that way, you can afford to put some more into your retirement. And maybe you're making some catch-up payments, or maybe you're just adjusting up, now that you can afford to. And, that again is where maybe the coach can offer some opinions, right? And the accountability of the fiduciary can come in and say, hey, we were doing this during inflation. Now you're covering your bills. You've got this little bit extra. We can move that over here, and this will be of this value, long term. And we can really, help walk everybody on both sides of that conversation through that equation and make the best possible suggestions and recommendations for those clients. And I think everybody should look at their money that way. And what you were saying earlier about just kind of rearranging everything, when it comes to retirement vehicles, is there a Cadillac? Is there, like, what is the number one retirement product out there that people are using to help fund their retirement? Is it the 401k, the employer-sponsored 401k? Is it somebody else's, mutual fund out there that's being exploited? Are they all kind of equal, or does one, tend to outperform the other over time?
I would say the most common is your employer-sponsored plan.
Okay.
Right. It's the ease of saving right out of your paycheck. Right. That's one less step to overcome. So that's where you most commonly see individual saving for retirement. And there's not a one shoe fits all.
That's right. Okay.
So when you get to retirement, it's basically how prepared are you? And then, where are you willing to accept, guarantees or flexibility in your withdrawals in the liquidity or the access to the account? There are options when you get there, but it really is what works best for you.
Again, another reason why to have that professional in your corner helping to guide your unique household's needs.
Yep. I was just going to say, the answer to my question, I think, was there is no one size fits all. That's what really resonated with me. Yes, these products are out there, but the employee-sponsored plan, like you said, is probably the most utilized. And then I heard you say something else. You said employee match is free money. What does that mean? Can you help somebody understand? What does it mean?
Yes.
What is the free money? Where does that come from?
So if your employer is basically dangling a carrot and saying, Don, Christine, if you're willing to save for retirement, I will help you out and I will give you a match, meaning you need to put in a certain amount in order to receive money. And many times, it's graded, or they'll say they match up to the first X percent. Let's just use 4% for conversation. And so, if I put in 2%, 2 is less than 4, there's more I could be getting from my employer. So
the employer is only going to match the 2, even though they're saying they'll give you 4.
Yep.
If you're only putting in 2, they're only going to be putting in 2.
If you put in 3, but if you put 4% or more, you got the highest amount of match possible from your employer. So a lot of people always say, oh man, I wish I could get a raise. Well, again, look inside. Am I maximizing that employer contribution? Whatever it might be, they're, willing to say, well, here's 4% more, or whatever the employer matches more in compensation. You're just not going to get it today. And actually, after compounding and investing over time,
get a whole lot more.
It's a whole lot more.
Same with profit sharing, annually, and I think it's been every year, I could be wrong, but every year my husband's gotten, a piece of some profit sharing, and he tells me the dollar amount. And I could say years ago, I'd be like, oh, that would have been great to have. But I think very differently now, because that's been invested for all of these years, and that has only helped us, achieve these goals of being able to retire. It's technically 9 years earlier if he chooses to, but yeah, don't be mad about profit sharing money that you're not getting in your pocket today.
Yeah, it's a snowball effect.
Yeah.
Don, this might not resonate with you, but here where Christine and I are, we have a long winter, and growing up in the Northeast, right, you've packed a snowball, you've rolled it. Maybe you threw it down the hill and it just keeps growing and expanding on itself. That is investing. Right? The compounding is what gets you from now to later, with you constantly adding and participating in that goal.
And we're talking millions. We're talking, if you start young, there is no reason why a low-income earner cannot become a millionaire.
I read, so I'll share 2 statistics based on what you just said, Christine, and then one that I was going to ask Sarah to probably correct me on, because I'll probably get it wrong, or maybe the information was bad. But the first one was the highest percentage of self-made millionaires out there are teachers, which blows people's minds. But it's because they participated in their sponsored plans, and they were consistent over time. And teachers just tend to have those good habits. They're very disciplined. They get into a mode and they just never break it, right? Because they live and breathe by a set of rules, and so they follow them. And so men and women, there was no leader. It was pretty even. I think it was 40s to 50 percentages, offset the two. But teachers, number one demographic of self-made millionaires out there using employee-sponsored plans. So I thought that was kind of interesting, not what you just said, Christine. You don't have to make $1 million to make $1 million, right? You just need to take a little bit of whatever income you have and be consistent over time. And this study was done over a 40-year period. So in 40 years, at least, they were able to amass over $1 million of retirement on a teacher's salary, and I thought that was amazing. The other one is the growth piece. So the same article referenced the amount of growth as it compared to the amount of principal that was invested by the employee. And it was something like 85% growth. 85% of the balance was growth. And I thought that was, again, like you said, $1 million. You don't have to put $1 million in the bank to get $1 million. You just need that $1 million, or you need that initial investment to be added to a little bit at a time over a long time period. And again, in 40 years, you should hit that $1 million goal. So I don't know, Sarah, if those numbers kind of jive
accurate
with, okay. So 85%
and
growth.
The teacher thing is so funny. I have so many teachers in my family, and they're
disciplined.
My sister, I laugh all the time. She's an elementary school teacher, and her house is this, and this.
It's almost
my
militant.
house is a little gray, right? and so they are. But I think that drives home. It's anyone can do it. You have to personally want to do it and have that discipline and put the actions into place, right? Just like in your lane, you guys can say, here's how debt should be paid off. Here's ways to create your budget. We can come up with a plan on the investment side. But if you don't take responsibility and you don't actually put forth the effort of let me pay down this debt, let me get to a better place financially, you know what, you're just going to have the inertia and live on a hamster wheel.
Yeah, hopefully people see this. They'll take that first step. They'll make that phone call or reach out and connect with someone, because you're right. You have to take action, right? Thinking about it won't get you there. Studying the market won't get you there, Understanding your employee-sponsored plan better than everybody else in the company will not increase your balance.
Yep, and actually, the number one factor on your balance is how much you save. The next important factor is the asset allocation, the breakdown between stocks and bonds. And then the third impact is which stocks and bonds you invest in. And people actually think in the opposite way, right? Which stock and bond am I in? What's the market doing today? Not really focusing on what you can actually control, which is your spending habits, your saving habits, and doing the right thing. So I always find that study interesting.
I think that's interesting too. I wouldn't have thought of it the way that, I would have thought of it the way you said it, not the way that the study pictures it or outlines it. Consistency is key, right? So you can consistently do the wrong things over and over, or you can consistently do the right things over and over and get the results that you ultimately want to look for. So as we wind down today, and because our show is called Off Limits, when it comes to your money, is there anything off limits?
I would say probably 10 years ago, yes, right? I wasn't comfortable with these conversations. I had student loan. It was, figuring out what not only Sarah was going to be, but, financially, what did these things look like? Today, I would say no. In our house, I kind of shared a little bit, it's out there. My husband and I are like, okay, how do we teach our sons about money, the importance of value? Eventually, what you did with your daughter, bring them into the conversation, set them up, because I've been on the opposite side of, oh my gosh, I didn't know my parents had this, or I discovered this. It can either be really great or really terrible. But, I think bringing your family into the conversation. And then my husband and I, from the beginning, we've been together literally forever. Like, we're high school sweethearts.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yes. And so I think I've been with him longer than I have not. So I think just that maturity of our relationship, but, it's very open. It's, okay, if you're spending $100, I don't need to know, but, those big purchases, we have a good understanding and a mutual respect as to how we both approach money, and relationships don't work if you don't have the same philosophy on it.
You're in alignment with each other, with your goals, with how you're raising your children, and it speaks to the ripple effect of what that alignment is bringing to your family.
Yeah. So I would say, and I hope this has kind of been the theme with Al, right? And the three of us are in agreement of, you have to get to the point where you're comfortable in doing it, but just like anything else, you got to take that leap of faith at some point. So in the past, money was probably off limits. Today, maybe because I talk about money all day long, every day. But no, it's good.
I love talking about money, and I love talking with people who love to talk about money.
Absolutely.
It's refreshing.
Yeah. It is. So we end each podcast with a inspirational quote, a book, and then an action step, something that somebody can do as soon as they end the episode with, okay, this was so inspiring to me. I do want to take action on this. And when we bring in a guest, we ask the guest to give us these three things. So what's your inspirational quote?
So my inspirational quote, unless you've interviewed one of my family members, which chances are no, no one else is going to have this one. It came from my grandfather. His name was Stephen Crane, and it was a saying. It was, "I'm Stephen Crane." And basically, he taught my mom and her siblings, and then my cousins, my siblings and all, to just be confident, be who you are, be true to yourself, but also, make your presence known. So when someone has a, kind of a down day or second guessing themselves, it's I'm Stephen Crane. And, my mom will call me all the time. She's like, "I'm Paul Flisick. Hi, Mom." But, so that is really a personal but inspirational quote on my end.
Yeah. So Sarah told me before we got on the phone with Donald today, and I got goosebumps as she was talking about it, because it is, if you think of yourself in that way, I'm Christine Spiak. This is who I am. I feel proud and confident in my own skin, and I do want the world and people to know that I have a voice. I have something to say that adds value and importance to the world, instead of being mousy and squeaky and a wallflower. I think that changes the way you interact with people in the world in general. Mm-hmm. So I am Stephen Crane is the quote.
That's the quote.
Now, do you have to use his name, or do you insert your own name?
No, we insert our own. And I've been teaching my son that one.
Yeah.
I love that.
And it's so funny. And he says, "I am Vincent Militano." And I'm like, "That's it. Like, you know what? Get out of your head." He doesn't understand. He's like, "What do you mean? I'm not in my head, right?" And I'm like, "No." Like,
he's very literal.
Yes, it's still a little bit literal, but it's, you know what? You can do this.
Yes.
Have confidence, and you can achieve it.
I feel like that could be the action step too. Look in the mirror and say, "I am," fill in the blank.
Yes. And then I would, add to that is do your goals. I hope we inspired you. Make those clear goals. Find someone to hold you accountable, even if it's someone personally in the short term. People like to take little baby steps. That's okay. Eventually you have to take that, put on your big boy, big girl pants and do it. But, find someone, if you need that, little bit in between, find an accountability partner that will hold you to it.
Great. So the last thing that we're going to end with is, what book has been an inspiration to you in your life?
Malala. I don't know if anyone has read her story, but I'm sure you've
I'm writing
seen
it down.
beautiful inside and out. And, she had to really overcome a lot of...
What country is she from? Do you remember offhand? I'm putting you on the spot.
One of the Middle Eastern countries. And I'm in a male-dominated industry. Less than 20% of advisors are female, which is really interesting because part of our job has to be empathetic, right? And so women by nature tend to do that a little bit more. But so every day, right, there's still a little bit of a gender bias in my industry. So, knowing she could overcome, a lot in her world, educationally, culturally, I'm like, okay, I could do this. So
I find it really interesting to read about or hear interviews with people who have obstacles, because we all have them, right? But to varying degrees. Exactly. So when someone has so many difficult obstacles in front of them, and to hear them come out on the other end thriving, not just surviving, but thriving, how can that not be an inspirational story to read? I haven't read it, so I'm looking forward to putting it on my list as well.
That list is growing. Mine too.
It is. We say it all the time.
We get new books faster than I can read them.
I know. I'm hoping to do a lot. I know this episode's not going to air until September, but over this summer, we're filming now in June at the time of this recording. I really hope to get a lot of reading done this summer. Sarah, is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with?
I would say to the younger listeners, and it can apply to the older ones too, you're going to make mistakes. I think, Don, you spoke about this perfectly. There's going to be mistakes. Acknowledge them and learn from them. Adjust, be nimble. That would be my few words of advice for everyone.
Thank you. And I think that's, really great words to end on. We appreciate your time today. Thank you so much coming in. Sarah and I met over probably a year and a half, 2 years ago with the Businesswomen's Network that we're both a part of. We're both on the board for it. I enjoy her company so much. I think she's a very smart, talented, not just professional, but human being. She does a lot for our community and gives back to others. She comes from a family, to know her mother is to know her, because they just give of themselves to our community. So for myself, if you do not have a financial investment professional in your corner, then I highly recommend you reach out to Sarah, see if the two of you would be a great fit for each other, see if your needs are something that she can help you with. And if not her, find somebody. Find an investment professional where you live, virtually, somebody who can help you with this piece of the pie.
Yep, it takes a team. Everybody's going to have a niche somewhere, and it's going to take 4 or 5 of those professionals to cover everybody's needs, on average. So absolutely. Sarah, thanks so much for being with us today. We really enjoyed your company and your conversation. Christine, I look forward to our next episode.
Always. I'm enjoying co-hosting this podcast with you so much. I love that we're blowing up the conversation or the topic of money. We're talking about it. We're interviewing people who have a lot of great value added to what this podcast is. So thank you both.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you heard it. Take the first step. Call a financial advisor. And if you can, call Sarah. And until next time, we'll see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Off Limits.
Beyond the podcast, we are money coaches who want to help you.
So if you are looking for help managing your money, use the links in the description below to contact either of us and learn how coaching can help you thrive.
Lastly, please help us to spread the word by subscribing, leaving a comment, and sharing our podcast with your friends and family.